Right, so the first thing we need to do is remove the old strings. So to do that, we just need to turn the tuning pegs as if we're lowering the pitch of each string. Now once you've done this for long enough, eventually the string will just come loose and start to kind of pop off of the tuning peg a little bit. When it does that, just take your other hand and just kind of pull it off yourself. Just pull it out the wee hole. There we go. Right, so we're just going to do that exact same thing for all of the strings. Now some people might say you shouldn't remove all 6 strings in the one go, you should replace each string individually, because if you take them all off at the one time, then the neck can end up getting warped or it messes up the truss rod or something like that. I've been removing all the strings in one go on all my guitars for the entire length of time I've been playing guitar, which has been about 14 years. I've never had any problems with it yet. If you take them all off in one go, it makes it easier to just give the guitar a clean and just wipe down the fretboard and dust all the bits that you wouldn't normally get into because of the strings. So there's never been any problems that I've had. There's no reason why you shouldn't do it. So just take them all off in one go. It'll be fine. Right, so now we need to take them out of the bridge as well. So to do that, we're just going to take those little white pegs and we just need to pull them out from the body of the guitar. Now you can use anything you want for this, some pliers or a file or whatever you have. Don't try and pull them out too forcefully though, they should come out quite easily. You don't want to rip them out too hard and damage the guitar or anything, it's not like we're pulling teeth out. So once you've got all of them out, all we need to do then is just take the strings out of the body of the guitar as well, and they'll just lift right out. There we go. So the next thing that we need to do is put the new strings into the bridge. So to do that, we're just going to feed the strings through the hole, and then if I show you the little peg for a second, if I can get it in focus. Come on. Oh, nearly there. There we go, right. So see that little groove? We want that to be facing the head of the guitar because that little groove is what the string is going to sit inside. So just push the little peg into that hole, make sure that groove is facing towards the string. And make sure you press down quite tight because we don't want these to pop out when we're tuning the strings up. So here's the A string, just going to do the same thing, feed it through the hole, put the peg in, press it down and pull on the string just to make sure it's tight against the peg. If it pops out, just press the peg back down again. Again, we just want them to be nice and tight. So I'm going to fast forward through the rest of these strings. I'm sure you get the idea. It's just the exact same process for all of them. So we can just skip through all of this. Now we need to attach the strings to the head of the guitar. So first thing, make sure the hole for all the pegs is pointing towards the floor. And then we're going to start off with a low E string, which I'm just feeding through the little hole. And once you've pulled it all the way through, we're going to pull it back again about 1 inch. And with that spare bit of string, we're going to wrap it clockwise round the peg. We want to wrap it underneath that bit of string that's poking out the other end as well. Okay. So there it is wrapped round, and that bit of string that's poking through, that's going over the top, that's going to hold it in place. That's going to stop the string from falling out when we try to tune it up. So once we've wrapped that round, we can just start tuning the peg and tightening it as if we would normally be raising the pitch of the string. Now we don't need to raise it all the way, we don't need to go all the way up to pitch with the string, just tighten it enough that you can feel some tension and you can feel that the string isn't going to pop out of place. And make sure that on the nut here, it's fitting into the little groove. You see there's 6 little grooves there on the nut, well there's one of them for each string, and just make sure it's fitting in that as well, because again, we don't want the string to be sliding out of place anywhere. So with your free hand, you can just pull on the string, make sure it stays in that little spot. Right, so that's one done. Now we can go on and do the A string, just going to be the exact same process. Feed it through the hole in the tuning peg, pull it back about an inch or so, wrap it round clockwise underneath the excess bit of string. Use one hand to pull on it to keep some tension in the string, and then use the other hand to just tighten it up. And again, we're not going to go all the way up to pitch, but just enough to keep it in place. If that little extra bit of string is getting in the way, just bend it up. We're going to be cutting that off later anyway. There definitely wasn't a cut there because the guitar fell halfway through doing this. And again, just make sure that that sits nice and secure in that little groove in the nut. So again, we can probably skip through the D string. You get the idea. Just going to follow the exact same pattern as the first two. Now, for the top three strings, the G, B and high E, we're going to follow pretty much the exact same pattern. Only difference though is that this time we're going to be looping the strings in the opposite direction. So this time we're going to be going anti-clockwise with the strings, okay? So pull it back about an inch after you've fed it through, loop it round anti-clockwise, underneath that excess bit of string, use one hand to pull down on it to keep tension in it, and then use the other hand to just tighten it up with a little key. The reason we're doing this in the opposite direction is because we want the strings to always be on the inside. We want them always to be facing towards the middle of the head of the guitar. You'll see with the lower three strings that they're pointing inside on the right hand side of the tuning pegs, and then for the top strings, the G, B and high E, they're on the other side, so they are pointing towards the left. Again, the B string, exact same pattern, pull it back an inch, wrap it around anti-clockwise, underneath the extra bit of string, tighten it up, yada yada yada. You can probably afford to skip through all this, you kind of get the idea now, I'm sure. See what I was talking about with how they are on the right, they're facing towards the middle, and then again on these strings they're on the left, so they're still facing towards the middle of the head. Right, next thing we need to do is just stretch the strings out a little bit. So all I'm doing is just running my hand up each string, just pulling on them lightly. Now remember, we haven't tuned each string up to pitch yet, so they don't have full tension on them. So we can just do this now, give them a little stretch before we take them up there, just to get them really used to being on the guitar. It'll help them hold their tuning a wee bit easier. We don't need to try and pull them too hard, we're not trying to rip them off the body or anything like that. Just a nice light little pull just to stretch them out a little bit, going up each string. Once we've done that, we can finally tune up the guitar. Now I've already got a video on my channel that explains how you tune a guitar, so I'm not going to bother going into it in this video. If you don't know how to tune a guitar, make sure and check out that video. What I will say though is that it's not going to be a case of just tune every string and then that'll be it ready to go. Even though we stretched out the strings, they're still going to take some time to acclimatise, so it's probably going to take you 2, maybe 3 rounds of tuning the guitar before the strings are actually going to stay in tune properly, right? So once you've tuned them all up, just go round them all again, and it might take more than 2 or 3 depending on the quality of the strings and the quality of the guitar, but if you just keep at it, eventually it'll hold its tuning. And then the last thing we need to do is just clip the ends off of these strings. Now when you're doing this, make sure that you get as close to the tuning peg as possible. We want as little excess string to be hanging out of there as we can get. Reason for that is because those ends can be quite sharp. If you touch them, you could end up jagging yourself or cutting your fingers. Or if you put the guitar inside a gig bag, they could end up ripping up the inside of the bag. So just try and keep as little excess string sticking out as possible, and make sure you stay careful when you're trying to cut them down to size.